We're delighted to welcome Hadil and Moosa today with us. Hadil is a Omani PhD student researching women and entrepreneurship at the University of Bedfordshire. She's with us here today at the Anglo-Omani Society, and she will be shortly presenting a lecture on her thesis. Hadil, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So my first question is, how did you become interested in researching on women entrepreneurship, given that you come from a media and journalism background?
Well, that's quite a straightforward question. Yes, I come from a journalism background and I studied media, but my first work, or my first job was in media department in Ministry of Manpower, so it was Ministry of Labor, and I had to deal with labor issues and organization. Here I became very much interested in career choices and career identity for us as Omanis, and how do we present ourselves and how, what kind of work we would do and things we wouldn't do. And of course, because I'm a journalist, so I'm kind of developed an interest, what meanings do we have for concepts such as entrepreneurship or concepts that are developed in different contexts and then came to our Omani context, what do we make of it? So that's how I became interested in entrepreneurship specifically. In Oman we had a symposium in 2013, and I was working as a freelancing at that time with a company, and I was part of that symposium, and that was, for me, I had access to all the reports and to the entrepreneurs or the potential entrepreneurs, and it was kind of, why don't I go deeper in that? And this is how it started.
So you're approaching your research on women's career choices through a cultural or gender lens. Can you explain to us the choice of this framework?
Well, yes, my research is under business school, but it is more a sociological perspective, which I'm looking at individuals, whether women or men or anyone. We are social products, so the meaning that we have and the choices that we make comes from the context that we were brought up in. And I became not interested in the economic perspective of entrepreneurship, which is mostly most of the research focusing on the economic perspective of entrepreneurship. I was focusing on what does that do in our life. I mean, if I'm becoming an entrepreneur, how would that change my the social structure, the social order in Oman, and how do we women run that? So it was more of understanding and meaning making through a cultural lens, because to make it simple, we think that we have one universal common sense, but we don't. We come from different contexts, and living in England, you can see there's multicultures. I mean, it's a very multicultural city, especially London, but then we have different common sense. So why not bringing that up and discussing it and understanding from different people's perspective? And of course, when I started research, you start knowing that the way that Arab countries are researched within Western lens.
Yes.
As being an insider, I thought that then why not making most of this and bringing our insider view and our insights as Omani. So that I thought that we need to bring more cultural understanding into the research area.
So when you were conducting your research, did you find that there were any barriers in engaging with the women entrepreneurs? Did you find them a bit reluctant to get engaged with the questions or the interviews? Or
I wouldn't say they were reluctant. Actually, there were some, how can I say it? First of all, I used storytelling method, and that wasn't used in the Arab context according to the existing literature that I had access to. But before that, getting access to women, I think because my journalism background, that helped.
Yes.
And in Oman, women being in the public space, even if we don't know each other, we know of each other. So that made it a bit easier when I contacted them. And it was actually, the difficult part was to introduce myself as a researcher.
Okay.
They saw me on TV, so they thought it's more of something to do with being in a magazine or on TV, but never came to their mind that this is based for research. So, but then they were very proactive with when I contacted women. Yeah. So.
That's really good. But to what extent do you think that the sample of the women that you were able to reach to to what extent does it represent the majority of the women entrepreneurs in Oman?
Well, my research is qualitative research and it's narrative, so which you start off saying that you're not representing, your sample doesn't really represent the majority. You're trying to get the deep meaning, the insight, new perspectives, so you need more time in an interview and you need to reach not all the women, but because if you reach, it's either the depth or either the breadth. So I was trying to get to the breadth, depth in the interview rather than saying that this is a survey and represent all Omani women. However, we can use this, I mean the finding of the research, we can use this as the foundation to develop surveys and then maybe doing statistical analysis and so on. But at this stage, it doesn't really represent all Omani women. So I'm not claiming that I'm representing.
So in your opinion, what's unique about the way Omani women approach entrepreneurship in comparison to women entrepreneurs elsewhere?
In my opinion, as a researcher or as a journalist?
As a researcher, I guess.
As a researcher, I would say at this stage, well, because I'm still in the final stage of my thesis and will be submitting soon, inshallah. At this stage, I would say cultures are unique and giving voice to different cultures in their own words, in their own frames, and giving them as well the chance to, because, well, I'm using narrative and storytelling, so there is part where you do ask them, what do you think? Ask them about their subjective interpretation. So you're taking their opinion of what they think, rather than your opinion of what you think of them. So it's more of a giving voice and giving ethnicity. And I would say this is unique in any culture.
Okay. Okay, within Oman, did you see that there was any difference in how entrepreneurship is perceived or practiced between Omani men and the Omani women?
Between Omani men and women? Well, first of all, I didn't cover Omani men, although maybe on the next stage after the PhD for a piece of research, because it was quite, if I covered Omani men, it would have been comparison study, and I wanted to give again the depth of going, because I went to the interior places and interior regions, and geographically that is in terms of being more logistics, you need to take logistics into consideration. So I didn't cover men at this stage. However, I did take women's opinion about how men are doing entrepreneur, so that's more of their perspective. What I would add is that there's differences within Oman itself. So women from interior perceive entrepreneurship in a certain way and practice it in a certain way. Women from Muscat, they had different perspective, and women from Dhofar. So there are some similarities, but there are some differences and some significant differences, I would say. And the educational background made a difference too. So women studying in the West, or had Western education, they are more exposed to the Western version of entrepreneurship. While there are some women who are dropouts and they know only the Arabic version, so they have different associations. So there was differences within Oman itself.
So can you elaborate a little bit more about how the term entrepreneurship is understood in the Omani context? Because the term we know comes from, or was introduced by scholars from the Western world. So how is it really perceived or applied in the Omani context?
I would say there's one very unique element about Omani context. If I'm trying to sum up and I'm trying to pick which of my findings to discuss about, but one of the very unique elements in the Omani context that we have an official category for an entrepreneur. So you are registered as a business in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, but then you are registered with Passment as an entrepreneur. So the official category makes a difference, or made a difference actually, on how people perceived what entrepreneurship is. And of course, to be clear here, I covered only the women who registered themselves as an entrepreneur. And while anyone could call himself or herself as an entrepreneur, but then I'm looking at the ones who registered. So having entrepreneur as an official category made a difference on how people perceived what entrepreneurship is. So yeah, that would be a unique element in Oman.
So you've just mentioned PASMED, which is the Public Authority for Small and Medium Enterprise Development, also known as RIADA. What do you think are the merits or the limitations of establishing such a government body which is solely responsible for formulating, organizing, and legalizing entrepreneurship sector in Oman?
I can't really discuss their limitation or their merits at this stage because I was looking at the perception and the meaning that women made of the concept. But I would say that having an authority that focuses on entrepreneurs and SME sector in Oman, it gives it more weight within the society and it gives it more attention because then it's not the same topic when you have a topic part of a section or rather a chapter by itself. Yeah. So you're giving a weight for what entrepreneurship is and that the government is actually paying attention that entrepreneurship in Oman, it needs to be developed. It's still in the infant phase, although we have an authority, but then because it started since 2013 and it was business before that, the SME sector, and it was even that, it started in 2007. So we're still developing, but then having an authority that formalize, legalize, and legitimize the concept, it gives it more weight within the Omanis themselves.
But having said that, do you see that the growth of women entrepreneurship in Oman is more of like challenging the status quo of women being in careers, or do you feel like women tend to get into entrepreneurship as a way of making use of an opportunity that was given to them to access the job market?
It's definitely an opportunity, yes, because all women saw that the support that they're getting from the government through PASMED is an opportunity because some of them they were actually moonlighting, which is they had a business on the side of their job, but then the opportunity that was given from the government and the support, they left their job and they started to focus on their business. So it is an opportunity, or it is perceived as an opportunity by all women in my sample, which is around 29. And but they're challenging the status quo. Maybe the term entrepreneurship or the concept itself is perceived more of trading and business with new elements. So women trading, we had that, or the women believe that this has culturally been practiced since ever, and it was a home business, it was done in the private spaces. The difference might be is the public space that they came out and they became more visible and the publicity became very high. But before that, women always did trading, women always did business, so it wasn't something new for women or associated that if you're a woman you can't do that. Yeah. Besides, it's preferable in certain spaces because you create your own space and that really works with the social norm in a way. So it wasn't kind of challenging the status quo per se, as it was kind of reframing the concept in a new way.
And did you find that women getting into entrepreneurship, has it changed like the dynamics of the society? Has it changed the role of women or the traditional role of women in Omani society? Or do you think that there isn't a traditional role for women?
No, there is a traditional role. And of course by research and by studies there is traditional role, and there is kind of the era that we're going through at this stage in Oman, that women are given rights in Oman. So it wasn't that, historically, it wasn't that we fought for those opportunities or those chances. We were giving those rights. And that changes the dynamics of how you interact with the given rights rather than fighting for them. But the women in generally, and again, I would say, I'm going to use only my research, they're taking the opportunities. So that gives an indication that women do take opportunities when they can. But whether entrepreneurship conflicts with the traditional role, I wouldn't actually comment on this, but my opinion would be it doesn't really conflict because it's always seen that women used to do business, but different space, different sector.
Just as a final question, how do you think the government could ensure that women entrepreneurs are more actively contributing to the growth of the Omani national economy?
That would be difficult to answer, or maybe I'm not entitled to answer because it's for the government to decide on this. But there, as far as I know, there's still the SME policies coming out, and so is the national women policy. So I suppose that would be more of a policy concern in the growth and having more active role. At this stage, I didn't look at this as much as I was looking at the meaning that they had for it, and what do they do with it, and how do they practice it, given that the notion is started in Oman 2013, so we're still in the shaping phase, and I can't really comment on the growth phase at this stage.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us today, and we wish you all the best with your PhD research.
Thank you very much.